Salut tout le monde, comment ça va? In today's video, I'm going through 4 mistakes that English speakers who are either living in or visiting France make that are really hurting their French progress. Alors, si vous êtes prêts, click on that like button down below, et c'est parti. Welcome back to the channel, or if you're new here, je m'appelle Alex. I'm English, but I live here in the sunny south of France and am now a French coach for English speakers struggling to speak French with confidence. So I have first-hand experience of the mistakes us English speakers make that end up holding us back on our journey to fluency, whatever our definition of fluency may be. What I'm not going to be going through in today's video are language mistakes that we make when we speak French, but rather the actions that we take, which, when left unchecked, contribute to a lot of wasted time. Check out some links down in the description if you want to see videos specifically on language mistakes. So yeah, the first thing on the list is the little things such as please, thank you, hello, and goodbye. Even if you don't think that you are able yet to have a proper conversation in French, it's important to develop the psychological habit of speaking French, even in little doses. So saying things like bonjour, au revoir, s'il vous plaît, et merci on a regular basis can really contribute to you feeling more comfortable in the language. Besides that, it's about politeness and respect in your new adopted country to use these basic yet really appreciated terms. And yeah, like I say, it can be really easy to think, oh, I'm not able to carry on the conversation in French. And even if that's not a conscious thought, it's subconscious, which leads us to say those basic things in English. Every time you make these utterances in English, you're robbing yourself of a chance to improve, even if it's by 1%. So if you're still getting comfortable with just the idea of speaking French, hearing those words come out of your mouth, push yourself to say these basic words in French, even if the next thing you want to say has to be in English, or if you have to say, parlez-vous anglais, it's still French, and this will set you on a positive path with a good psychological habit in place. The fact is, this is your unique personal journey in French, and so don't rob yourself of those small moments, those small victories, because even if you're not comfortable using things like bonjour, merci, au revoir, s'il vous plaît, just by saying that a few times, or even just once, is going to feel like a victory for you. And that is exactly the mindset you need to have for long-term success in French. Even today, I still get nervous when I need to talk about something I haven't spoken about before. So ahead of time, I make a note to myself about defining what success would be for me from that interaction. So if you're at the point where you're still making these utterances in English, make a note to yourself to try it in French next time, and don't feel you have to justify how big of a victory it is for you to anyone. Besides, you don't want to be that arrogant tourist who expects everyone to speak to him in English, right? So mistake number 2 amongst English speakers either living in France or spending any significant amount of time here that hurts their French progress is over-relying on their French-speaking family and friends. Several of my coaching clients live with a native French speaker, whether it be their husband, their wife, their boyfriend, their girlfriend, and at some point in time, they have felt varying degrees of strain on the relationship because of the expectation that has developed on the native French speaker in the family to deal with all of the French-related aspects of their life. Now, there's no doubt about it, dealing with stuff from administration to the weekly shop when you're still learning the French language can be difficile, and some of the time, or most of the time, we don't want to sweat and panic and stress about the smallest task. So what do? We ask our significant other or friend to help us out. I know at times I still do, and I've been here several years. In the immediate term, it's very handy to get some annoying admin task done and dusted so you can focus on something that's more important to you in that moment in time. But the thing is, if left unchecked, this does deux choses. Numéro 1 is it sows the seed in the relationship for the native French-speaking half to deal with anything that requires French, potentially putting pressure on the relationship. And numéro deux is it robs you of a chance for growth, both in terms of your French competence and your personal development. Your partner or your friend will not always be around to help you with that supermarket trip or to help you call the electricity company when the power suddenly goes out. Now let me relate to this on a personal level for a moment. I'm someone who is easily stressed and can make mountains out of molehills. And sometimes I wonder, how did someone like me get so far with French, since every day there's a potential to make a new mountain? I'm currently flat hunting, and that means that there's a lot of potential for uncomfortable phone calls to be made in French. My partner Solène has done a lot of the phone calling so far, partly because we have an unspoken agreement where, because I'm spending more time looking up ads, responding via messages, sending them on to her part of the deal would be to make the phone calls. But there's a part of me which knows that I'm avoiding making the phone calls because I'm not native and I know that it won't sound as good as if she picks up the phone. So I've since made a personal point to myself to pull my weight a bit more and to start making phone calls. That's exactly what I've been doing in the last week or so. And yesterday I had to leave a voicemail because the person didn't respond, and it went really smoothly. Usually I hate it. And that's basically because of the practice I've had in just the last 7 days. I've basically memorized this script that I've ended up using on every single phone call. That wouldn't have happened on the very first conversation, but this result is because of those small actions that I've taken in the last 7 days. My point is here, if I'd continued to let Solène make the phone calls, I would have missed out on those opportunities to improve my comfort with French and find out where my gaps are in vocabulary in this context. By the way, let me know in the comments if you have a Francophone partner. Does any of this resonate with you? So I may be someone who's easily stressed and anxious, but I'm also someone who cares deeply about my shortcomings and overcoming them. I'm really competitive with myself, and there's always a point, no matter what the challenge is, where I say no more. And the thing is, in French, especially when you live here, but when you really want to improve in the language, every day presents you with another potential no more moment. And so you really have to get into the habit of saying no more to yourself and just getting stuff done. Do a bit better than the day before. And you can't do that if you're over relying on your Francophone partner to do everything or the majority of things in French for you. So next time there's something you would ordinarily ask your French speaking friend or partner to do, challenge yourself to see if you can get it done by yourself. Depending on your level and depending on your tolerance for discomfort, that might be a Google search which takes longer than normal because it's in French, or it might be a scary phone call. Just do your best. Compete with yourself and your previous best. Obviously, if it's something way above your current capacity, then find another opportunity to take on. Just don't fall into the trap of over-relying on your loved one. Numéro 3 on the list of mistakes English speakers either living in or spending time in France make that hurts their French progress is sticking to the English-speaking crowd. One of my coaching clients, Jessica, lives in Luxembourg, where it seems that everyone both speaks English and wants to speak English, which made it very hard for her to actually practice her French. In France, it can be a little bit different because they're not known for their competence in English. However, you can still very easily find yourself in a bubble where you only ever speak English, which is of course going to harm your French. When I first arrived in Montpellier, one of the first events that I started regularly going to in order to both meet people, but primarily for me, practice my French, was a language exchange at the local Irish pub. It was great, it was really relaxed, which made it easier for me to have the courage to speak when I was way more limited back then. But the thing was, it could also be a bit too relaxed. It was an hour of French followed by an hour of English, and each week you'd alternate which language went first. I know not everyone is as focused, obsessed with improving their French as I am, but I would always find it a shame when every week at this event there'd be a group of English speakers who would clearly come to the event and use it as a place to catch up and have fun with their friends. And about halfway through each week, one would say something like, we should really be speaking more French. but then carry on to spend most of the night speaking in English. Now, the truth is, it takes real effort to speak a foreign language. It's uncomfortable and it's unnatural, and it's so easy to fall into the trap of only speaking in English. Bad habits are hard to break and good habits are hard to build. What is too much English? Well, that's for each individual person to decide. And since you're watching this, you clearly care about improving your spoken French. So I can tell you, you know inside yourself how much French you're speaking at the moment, how much English you're speaking at the moment, and how much more of an effort you could make to speak more French. Because at the end of the day, how much you improve in French is directly linked to the amount of time you spend in French. Within that, you can get into the nuts and bolts and find the complexities of the reasons why each of the skills improve at different rates, blah, blah, blah. But essentially, more French exposure, more production of the language, you're going to improve faster. Going to a language exchange, which is an event devised to create a safe environment for us to practice, to speak slowly, to try new things, to make mistakes, and then only speaking English or speaking English most of the time, is just doing a disservice to yourself and again robbing yourself of an opportunity to improve. Especially if you work in English the rest of the week and perhaps this is your only time in the week to do French, and then you're easily giving in to the temptation to speak English. With some habits, you can simply remove the temptation. Think, got a habit of eating too much chocolate? Just don't put chocolate in the house in the first place. But it's a bit more difficult when it involves your native language, right? That comes from a real inner strength and inner determination to speak less English and speak more French. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying don't speak any English. I have so many friends with whom I speak English and I live here in France. But I have a level of interest in learning the language above others, so I made sure and I make sure I get my practice in no matter what. I took classes online even when I was living here because that was my hour or my half an hour just to speak French. I would go to the language exchanges and make sure that hour I spoke as much French as I possibly could at my level. And now I'm in a relationship, I speak French pretty much every day, but there's still limitations there because we don't talk about every single topic. And when we talk about something new, I get stuck. And then I make a decision, do I switch to English or do I carry on in French? I have that baseline expectation of myself. But if we're not talking about things like a language exchange event or something meant for you to practice the language, yes, it's true that making friendships here in France, because of the language and also for some cultural reasons, it is often really difficult. But unfortunately, that's just a reality of where you are. You now live in this country, and this is just a reality, and you find ways to make it work for you. For me, I typically make friends and made friends with people who spoke both languages. So I would make sure for myself, again, for my own personal satisfaction and my own personal growth, I got the practice in with them no matter what. And if it was turning into a relationship where we only spoke English, then I would get a dedicated language exchange partner with whom I went to watch French films with. And then I would speak to her as much as I could in French about that film, and she would speak to me in English. The foundation of that relationship was the practicing of each other's languages. You know in yourself when you're speaking too much English, and at the end of the day, more French equals more improvement in your French, which will just feed back into wanting to speak more French. Numéro 4 on the list of mistakes English speakers make in France which harms their French progress is over-relying on English-speaking services. We are so lucky to call English our native tongue. In some ways, it puts us at a great advantage, but in others, I think it actually puts us at a disadvantage. A little anecdote to help illustrate this is that when I moved to Montpellier, I made a lot of international friends, and one day I made a Portuguese friend, and since she was introduced to me by an Australian mate as a colleague, I made the assumption that she spoke pretty good English. But it turned out she barely understood me, and I felt bad for making that assumption. I felt that that betrayed a sort of ignorance in me as a native English speaker. She moved to France for her PhD and was working here, and she later told me that because her English wasn't very strong, you know, when she had trouble with something, she had to persevere because people wouldn't understand her if she spoke Portuguese. She had to persevere and make her point known in French. I'm sure you can imagine how horribly draining and frustrating that must have been for her. But over time, through force of effort and having to do this to make herself clear, her French got really good, actually, really quickly compared with myself, for example. You could say, oh, it's because I wasn't in that same environment, and to a certain degree that is true, but it's actually because she had to persevere a lot more than I would have to, because I would have been able to get my point across and been understood by the people in the place of work who understood both French and English. I feel like in those micro moments, in those instants, us English speakers, when we get stuck, you know, when we get frustrated and we feel like we don't want to carry on, we know we have that safety net, that chance that the other person is going to understand us if we spoke English. And so I feel like we don't develop that tough outer layer or that perseverance in us that my Portuguese friend had to develop. It's in some of us more naturally than for others, but I feel like her having to go through that developed that resilience that not all of us are ready to use in the beginning. And so by not having to persevere as much as she did, I feel like we English speakers don't develop that mentality that would really help us to progress faster. Now, related to that resilience, I am terrified of becoming over-reliant on English in my day-to-day life here in France, because I know how easy it is to develop a bad habit. I'm afraid that if I give into it once or twice, that's just going to be the start and it's going to snowball, and therefore I'm going to lose that resilience that I've built up over so long. So I get a bit down and dismayed when I see expats in online communities asking others for English-speaking helplines for companies like the tax office or EDF, the electricity supplier. Now, before you jump on me in the comments and say that's unfair, I recognise that I don't know these people, they're strangers to me, I don't know how long they've been here, I don't know their level of French, I don't know anything about them. But I can't help but let my mind wander when I see these and imagine it part of a bigger problem, and I think, oh dear, that's going to slow them down in French. And I definitely don't make comments on their post saying things like, learn French, or why did you come to France if you're not prepared to handle it? Because I don't make those assumptions. As I've said repeatedly in this video, it's the little actions that add up to bigger French progress, even in the immediate term when you don't see how this is going to help you and it's stressful and it's difficult and you want either someone else, as we mentioned in point 2, to deal with it for you, or you want to find a way to do it in English. You're robbing yourself of an opportunity to practice. Now, if you are a complete beginner, then reading the tax office in French is hopeless. You're not going to learn anything from that apart from what you already knew, that that you wouldn't learn anything, right? You wouldn't be able to do anything you wanted to do in French on that phone call. However, a lot of you watching me on this channel and still with me on this video are at that stage where you have a good base, at least in the French language. And it can be easy at that point to think you're not ready for certain things. But it's all about developing that mentality to regularly do things that are above your level of comfort, because that's how you push yourself forward. You do it in your exercises, on French learning websites, etc. But when it comes to do it in real life, it has that bigger pressure on it, right? But that is, if you can regularly or semi-regularly make yourself do those things. One example of those things is calling the French number rather than asking for an English-speaking hotline, for example, is a great way to do that, and then be proud of yourself after it. And as I said before, define in your head what would be success for you on that call. We're not aiming for perfection, we're aiming for progress. When I consider looking for some online resource in English to help me with something connected to my life here in France, I've usually already exhausted all the French that I could muster in terms of vocabulary to stick into Google and to come up with the right answer. or I'm just having one of those j'ai la flemme, I can't be bothered days where I don't have the energy to do it. But whatever the reason, I often think back to my Portuguese friend and remember her biggest struggle having to prove herself in French, and that gives me some strength to push on and make a bit more effort than I have already in order to try and push myself forward and push my French forward. Because I know that this 15-minute task and the one in 2 days' time and the one in a week's time are opportunities to make micro progress, which will lead to where my French will be in 6 months from now. So that is point number 4. Don't become over-reliant on English-speaking services when you're in France. Know what your current difficulty level is that you can manage and go a bit further. Push yourself, because that micro progress leads to big progress. If you are living in a French-speaking country and you feel like you want to start relying less on English in your day-to-day life and build the habits that will help you speak French with confidence, then I want to let you know that my 8-week group experience, Find Your French Confidence, is starting again in the new year. Check out the link in the description to put yourself on the waiting list and get 10% off when we launch. So, to sum up, the 4 biggest mistakes that I see English speakers making in their everyday life in terms of actions that they take which harm their French progress are saying the little things too many times in English. Number 2 is over-relying on a French-speaking friend or partner. Number 3 is sticking to an English-speaking bubble or speaking too much English when there's plenty of opportunity to practice French. And number 4 is becoming over-reliant on English-speaking services. And if you're living in a francophone country that isn't France, I'm sure these come up for you as well in some sort of way. So please do let me know down in the comments below if they resonate at all. I would love to read them. Mais ça c'est tout pour cette vidéo tout le monde. Merci beaucoup de m'avoir rejoint aujourd'hui. Next week on the channel is video number 100, numéro 100. So make sure you subscribe to French in Plain Sight here on YouTube to make sure you don't miss out on the special event planned for that one. I really look forward to hearing all about your experiences down in the comments below. Merci beaucoup aussi to all my supporters both here on YouTube and on Ko-fi called Les Francophiles. You make these videos possible, so thank you so much. Honestly, I love making videos like this one, so your small support really does go a long way to making me feel like it's worth my time and energy that I put into them. If you want to join them as supporting the channel beyond just liking and subscribing, please do check out the links down in the description below. Also down in the description are always free resources to help improve your French and anything related to this video. But until next time tout le monde, merci beaucoup d'avoir regardé, bon courage pour le français et à bientôt. Ciao.